second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the motion passes. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at tonight's agenda?
Yes.
Is there anything anyone would like to add to tonight's agenda? Okay, great. I'd like to make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda as listed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. The agenda's been adopted. On to the next thing in the agenda. We don't have any persons registered to address the committee, so we'll go straight into approving last week's minutes. Mr. Pritnoff has already corrected in the written minutes that he's given me here that I'll sign later, that there was an error in the date in the very first box of call to order of what the actual date was. He's corrected it to May 19th. Does anyone else see any errors or any corrections they'd like to make?
Nope.
All right, great. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended from last week, or not, from the last meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Awesome. Motion passes. All right. On to new business. Looking at our financial packet for 2025. Mr. Britton, would you like to review the packet?
So actually, I apologize, that is pending still due to not having all the transactions in by the end of last week. I did not have a chance to finish that, being that this is the first, this meeting is towards the beginning of the month. We've seen this in the past, so that will be in the July meeting for May. Likely June will have the same issue because we don't even get the documents until the second or third business day, which is a Thursday in July. So, and
Cool.
the fourth being a holiday. So expect those to be a month behind.
All right, awesome. So just rolling on through our new business. We have a number of items. I guess we can take it one by one. Captain Reed, are we being asked to recommend these to council tonight, these various items, or are we just being informed of these items?
I'm not sure what items you're talking about.
Yeah, I can speak to it. Captain Reed is definitely familiar with the items, but just the order of things, I compiled this with Mr. Fisher. So first item is the new Tahoe, which my understanding is going to be delivered any day here. There was originally budgeted for a used camera, which was number one, unable to be obtained, and then secondly was actually recommended against by the vendor. My understanding is it's like an old computer. By a 5-year-old computer, you get much worse performance and inconsistencies. But even that not being the case, that the camera is actually not even available. So that required the PD to focus on a different camera system, which is the newer camera system, which also requires a cloud-based system. Everything else that we have on the rest of the cars that we have is in our server, which is next door. But this would be just for this vehicle. It's a $9,000 camera plus the supports for it, which is $13,000. I mean, with the subscription for the web service. And I can't speak to those specifically. That you'd have to ask Captain Reed. Total price of that is $13,100. There was $2,500 originally included for the original camera purchase. So that increased the cost of the Tahoe by $10,600. There is not an ask in front of you. The way that I'd like to do appropriations moving forward is that you have a running list so that when we get to the appropriations amendment, there's not, oh, wow, what was this? You can look back and see every minute since February, there's been a running list. So this would just be another item to the list. A little bit disjointed over here. You can see the running total is just over $30,000. This is not only for the PD. This is including the items that we had discussed before, which were not appropriate. They were not encumbered at the end of 24. That's about $14,000. And there's two other items. The police department had the opportunity to run a detail at the NATO conference in Dayton, which is fully reimbursed to us. However, although it's fully reimbursed to us, we have to appropriate that reimbursement in order to take advantage of that. So those monies have been paid, but in order for us to actually increase appropriations for the year to account for all that additional money, that would have to be increased as well. But again, that's not money that we're spending extra. That's just money that's being authorized that's otherwise being reimbursed to us anyway.
Got it, so the 6,400-ish and the 6,900, those were the mistakes from last year.
From last year,
that
that's
we're
correct.
fixing. And then the 34 and change and the 27, those are both gonna be
Reimbursements,
Got
which
it. So
exactly,
the only
that
true
doesn't,
additional cost is that 10,000 for the time.
that's correct. So again, the total appropriations amendment is $30,000, but that should be separate in your minds. And the way that you consider this is that about 6,000 of that is reimbursements. And of course, about 15,000 of that is from the non-encumbered funds from 24. So
Okay.
it's really only the 10,000.
And when are we gonna be looking at that appropriations?
I think at this point, we have a significant enough list that we can do that at the next meeting. The issue is, of course, that I was out for a holiday at the beginning of last week, so a lot of this stuff really didn't come out, and we weren't able to communicate it to the solicitor until pretty late, trying to get things as early as possible. So this would have to be in the July meeting, but I'm happy to move forward with that.
Is that going to put a roadblock in any of these? Like, we're still obviously gonna be able to get the Tahoe, even though we still owe them another 10 grand.
So the way that it works is we have money, it's just, it's a 12-month budget, right?
Yeah.
So we don't want to run out of money in month 11 or month 10, but we're only in month 6, so we'll be fine.
Was the camera and everything already purchased, or is that still kind of like pending?
The authorization for the camera has been given. I don't know the current status.
Okay. Do we know, and we can go over this during appropriations, but do we know what the annual subscription fee for that cloud-based service? And
I don't have those figures in front of me, but I can absolutely send those to you.
yeah, when we look at appropriations and actually get to start voting on it, I'd love to see, any sort of continual fees, anything like that.
So on all of the new cameras moving forward, they're going to be continual fees. They're all cloud-specific fees because that's the camera system that is supported by Motorola moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just.
Yeah,
love
so
to see
I'm
those
just letting you know, meaning this is gonna be the first one, but the next camera and the next, and when we talk about the grant that we applied for, so that's going to pay for a certain amount of that subscription, definitely the first year. I don't know past the first year how much that's gonna be, but I mean, this is a significant cost which is being put on a lot of smaller communities, which is, obviously why it's so critical that we get those grant funds to get it off the ground. But there will be support costs moving forward, absolutely.
Yeah, just so we can, have that
Yes.
information in front of us
Yeah,
when we
I can
go
do
to
that,
vote
for
on
sure.
it. Because we have, in recent conversations, learned about subscription costs and not been thrilled with them.
Great way to implement a lesson learned.
Okay, so that takes us through pretty much all of those potential appropriations. 2026 tax budget packet. Whoa, binders.
I try. And there are only 4, and I know there's more than 4 of you at the table, but there's only 4 council members who are actually,
You're right, how's that?
on the committee, so I made 4. So actually, I'm gonna take a look at this one. So you'll notice a lovely penned letter, which I cribbed some of it from another municipality, Silverton. But they have a similar package to this, and I actually sat down with their administrator about 2 months ago, and I let him, I was like, download, just give me what you got. And he was like, hold on one second, he went over the shelf and he pulled this off, and I was like, wow, so that's amazing. So this gives you an idea of what's in this packet. The main thing for you guys that is not new is gonna be the first 5 pages after the letter, which is all of our funds, all the previous years, all of the moving forward years. I actually included 22, which we normally don't give 5 years, but
Yeah.
how do you lose from that? But on many of the, so this is just your standard appropriations. Now, if you go past that, there are tabs, and the tabs have based on the department. I divided the village into 3 different departments. It's a little bit arbitrary because there are kind of more than that even within the administration. but the administration includes clerk, mayor, council, and miscellaneous operations. So that's some of those kind of smaller funds. I can separate this into more tabs. I just didn't have the time to do it. And I mean, this is just, there's a lot of detail and it's kind of not necessary, I think, to break it down even more, but it's whatever you guys want.
Every page
So-
needs its own tab.
Right? It's like, so why have
Why
tabs?
tab?
You know, it's
Exactly,
like,
that's the
come on.
point.
You
What's
should
a joke?
You should see Silverton, there are 10 funds that have one page each and they have their own tab. So I saved you from extra tabs. Okay, so this gives you a breakdown of the admin, the clerk, and then all these miscellaneous funds. And again, it's just got, it's got a little summary on each one, and it's got that total. And then at the end of each one, which I didn't write total, but I think it's pretty obvious. So that's gonna be your total for that department across all funds, right? Now, again, that's not the total cost to the village because there are funds which bring in their own, or there are departments which bring in their own funds. For instance, the DEA fund within the police department brings in money and reduces the total cost. But that is how much money is being spent out of each department. So first is the administration, second is the police, and the third is the service and roads, which, I mean, it's massive, but again, that's because so much of what we do is paving roads, is coming off the road levy. So that's these last couple of pages, and past that, so for your own reference, okay. So that's the end of the road funds. Past that, these are supports for where we get our money from. This is a letter I got from Jessica Miranda, she's our Hamilton County auditor, and this gives us how much estimated revenue the village is expecting for 2026. I request this, she sends me her letter with the summaries, and then this is all the support that she has. And this is all the stuff that I attach or that Renee attaches whenever we put things into UAN. On the last page is what we get from Rita, and that's our estimate of gross income tax for 2026. Now, the most important thing to recognize with this is that this is an estimate based on not really knowing Gulf Manor. So she says between $1.1 and $1.2 million. I believe it is irresponsible to expect in our budget $1 more than the minimum, because we don't know what businesses are going to flourish, what businesses are going to not flourish, right? We want to see them flourish, we want to see them do well, but we can't expect that they're gonna have blowout years, right? That they're just, they're blowing it up. So you'll notice that 1.1 on the second page in this packet is the assumption that I put in for 2026. We're expecting municipal income tax at 1.1. And on this first page here, all of these real estate and municipal income tax and the local government and the property tax, all of those can be found in the supports in the back. So you understand where the money's coming from and where we get those numbers from. Any questions?
Could you repeat that last bit of where we get all the money from?
So on the last page or on the last tab is the supports. So you'll see $849,535 for the general fund.
Mhm.
Let's turn to the second page, and the combination of real estate taxes and the property tax allocation, $767,403 and $82,131. The combination of those two is $849,535. Now, if you want to see those numbers, you can turn to the next page in the supports, which is $767,403 and $82,131.
Mm-hmm.
That's where all these numbers are coming from, right? I'm not making these up. These are given to us by the auditor. They're giving us these, and they're very close. Like the auditor numbers are very, very close. I don't generally have any reason to question these. I wouldn't inflate them, even though I know they will be higher generally, but I know these are pretty good numbers. For the income tax, that's where there's a little bit more, how are businesses doing? How are, if you're talking to our businesses. So I went over to Wright Brothers earlier today, and I see that they're doing really well. I went there on Friday. They had 6 trucks in their lot. They're closing up before the end of the day. They're making deliveries. They're moving. That's their main operations and distribution center, right? So that gives us an idea of how they're doing. But we really never know. And they're not necessarily sharing, oh, by the way, we're doing, we're doing real well. Because they don't have that responsibility to us necessarily. So take this home, digest this. this is what I would like to do moving forward for the tax budget and for appropriations. I may change this format a little bit, that when we get to appropriations, we'll put the tax budget in the back and have it a little bit simpler. I'm not exactly sure how I want to do that, but if you have feedback, if you have specific items that you want to see, I know there was a lot of talk about line item detail. Well, over here, this is your line item detail, and this is as granular as UAN will let us get. So if you have more questions than this, please reach out. And if you don't like this, so then we have to move to a much more expensive accounting software, which is not going to cost us $4,000 a year, it might cost us $20,000. That's what you want to do, go for it. But I think this is really awesome. There's a lot of detail in here.
Page?
This is just the second page on the police department tab, but it's on all of them.
It's the
It's
second
like,
page of any of the departmental.
once you go past that cover page on each department, this is the granular line item detail.
Yeah.
You want to know how much money we have put into the road fund for 2026? We're expecting $1.1 million in capital investment. That's outside of the $85,000 approximately that we're paying in interest-free loans per year. So those are all separated by line item. There's a lot of blank ones here, but those are all potential line items that we can utilize. There are more than that. These are just ones that were added previously, and it's not simple to remove them once they've been added. So it looks more complicated than it is, but again, if you have questions, please ask me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate this, Eric. I know I've given you a lot of feedback on the budget and advocating a lot of requests, so I really appreciate how detailed and thorough this is.
I do what I
Only
can.
feedback is next time I need a highlighter.
I believe they sell them
I
at
don't
Staples.
have-
Just a super quick question
Yes,
on it, and of course, I'll save any more complicated time, actually look into it. On the detailed line items,
yes,
where it'll have like a fund or an account code,
yes.
but it won't have any money in it, does that just mean there's nothing in that fund right now?
So that's
Mainly,
the terminology of your question is not exactly precise, meaning each line item is, depending on what the first numbers are, that's your fund, right? So
Yeah.
1,000 is the general fund.
Got it.
So there is money in the general fund. However, if you go to the 1,110, 229 other insurance benefits, I'm sorry, travel and transportation, so that specific line item doesn't have money, but the fund has money.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah.
And we can get into it, because I was just looking
Yeah,
at
that
motor vehicles.
Yeah.
It's like, but we're buying a car, so.
right. So exactly. So those are generally for repair. That would be like repair and maintenance of motor vehicles. But again, this doesn't tell you how much is in. So if you want more granular detail, how much has been spent. So that's what we provide in the monthly finance report.
Right.
That gives you all of those details, and you can see where it is compared to this bigger number. But all of this is in there too. So the only ask at this point, like I said, is take this home, digest it. If you have questions, bring it, please bring it to me before the next meeting, because by the next meeting, I would like to have the tax budget is not the appropriations. The appropriations just gives you an idea of how much things cost. Tax budget is how much money we're expecting in, and that's these last couple of pages. So that's what we need you to approve on July 7th, because the deadline for that from the county is July 15th. We're giving it to you a month in advance, so that if you have comments or you think, hey, Eric, there's revenue that you're not accounting for here, I want to make sure that we're accounting for that. I don't believe that exists, but if you think we're going to get a $500,000 grant and you're confident of that, I'll put it in. Just tell me what you
So
want.
questions about the income and support documents in the back by next committee meeting. Questions about the expenditures, those can.
That would be that'll be approved hopefully by November, but that would be before then, and those questions can come, but those questions don't. Those questions don't change what we do in July, because the July tax budget is really talking about receipts.
Okay. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Awesome. So that is all of our new business for tonight. We have no pending items. So the only announcement we have is that the next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for Monday, July 7th, 2025 at 7 p.m. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Adjourn.
Eric, do you want to put questions?